Welcome to Say There's Ability, a podcast to educate and inform you about disability employment issues. My name is David D'Arcangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of Save as Ability. It's David D'Arcangelo, and we've got a guest today, a great guest, and we're going to get right to our great guest. But first, if you could help us out, we want to continue to grow our channel and keep great content flowing for you. So if you could like, subscribe, share, comment, all of that really does help us grow our channel and get our message out. So again, we got a great guest today. Welcome in Doug McCullough. Doug, how are you?
David, I'm great, thanks. Great to be
Terrific.
here. I'm a real fan of you and the podcast.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate that. And you've got so many great accomplishments here. We could talk all day just about any one of them, but you've written a book recently. You've been a great disability advocate. I know you do speaking engagements and, you spend a good amount of time in supply chain and corporate culture. So where do you want to start, Doug?
Oh, wow. Well, maybe just at the top, I have a form of spinal muscular atrophy. It's not always obvious just sitting here on the pod, but I started seeing doctors when I was 11 years old, as I was the slowest runner in class, and it's a slowly progressive disease. So then I started having problems running, going upstairs, getting up out of chairs, and it just slowly progressed over time. And 2 years ago, I started using a power wheelchair off and on, and then unfortunately about a year ago, took a bad fall and broke my femur, so I'm using the chair full time at the moment. But obviously, as you know, disability is just a part of who I am. So I grew up in a rural area. I didn't know anyone else with a disability, and I really had no connection to the disability community. It was just focused on trying to live my life the best I could, and just kept going, plugging away. I went to college. I grew up on a dairy farm, majored in dairy science with the idea of being a veterinarian. Took my first anatomy and physiology class, and that didn't go so well. So I thought maybe I should be a veterinarian. So I changed course a bit, and then went on and got a master's. Had a great career in the dairy industry. Went back to business school. Was fortunate to get into Duke University, and out of there, Johnson & Johnson recruited me, and I had a wonderful 23 plus year career at J&J in supply chain and procurement.
Wow, that's a lot, Doug. That's the elevator pitch. You can tell you're a public speaker there. Well, first, thanks for identifying, because I wouldn't know that, and I think many of our viewers and certainly listeners probably wouldn't be able to identify that. So thanks for identifying that you are a person with a disability. I think, as we go throughout the years here, I know you've been involved in disability rights and advocacy for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your reflections of when you first began your career and now where we are in terms of the overall disability
Sure.
movement, if you will.
Yeah. So as mentioned, I really wasn't connected to the disability community, and really, given the shame and stigma around disability, the last thing I wanted to be categorized as a person with a disability. There's such a negative stereotype around that.
Right.
And
It's not great for getting dates when you're a young man, I'll tell you that.
Exactly right. And so I was just, like I said, trying to do the best I could, and was fortunate that I do have, excelled academically and had a number of other talents and was able to do well in my career. But then in my mid to late 20s, I started getting involved in adaptive sports, meeting other people with disabilities, getting more connected to the disability community. And then about around 2012, 2013, just started getting involved with disability in the workplace at Johnson & Johnson. And through my, just being connected with the disability community, I started seeing examples of how people with disabilities would often be marginalized. For example, I almost missed a flight for work because the elevator was out of service at the Newark airport. And then so I was like, well, geez, that's not right. And then at my local mall, I saw the snow pushed into the handicapped parking spot instead of making it clear, like, well, geez, that's not right. And then you start hearing statistics like, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities, which, as you know, is, astronomically high. So I'm like, geez, that's not right. So you just start seeing these things, and I thought, somebody should do something about that. and then
somebody is me, Doug,
yeah, exactly.
Right.
And that dawned on me, well, wait a minute, maybe I can help with that. And what really kicked it off in a big way for me is Johnson & Johnson had an internal TED Talk program. And I'd seen a couple people give talks in that program, but it was really the old-fashioned stereotypical disability as inspiration type talk.
Yes.
So like, if my 10-year-old son with a hearing impairment can play low league baseball, then by God, I can do anything, type talk. And that's fine, but that's not really what it's like to live day in and day out with disability. So I
The
thought,
nitty-gritty.
yeah. So I thought, well, let me do a talk about disability perspectives and misconceptions. And it really took off and became one of the most popular talks globally at J&J. And so I kept getting invited to talk to different groups around the company. And that just led to more and more conversations. I ended up helping launch and lead Johnson & Johnson's global employees with disabilities group, which grew to over 4,000 people globally, including allies. So a huge, push on that. And then with the speaking at the, I don't know about you, but at the end of every talk, I'd be like, oh, I forgot to say that, or oh, I should have answered that question differently. And so then that led me just thinking, I should just write this all down. So then when I get asked to talk, I just be like, here you go. Here's the document. Just read this. Everything's in there. And so that ended up leading to the book. And then about 2 years ago, my job, there's a big corporate restructuring and my job got cut, but it was fine. I was there long enough and old enough that I actually got an early retirement package. So that freed me up to do more work along. And so that's actually why I had the time to really take the book and make it a real book and get it published. So it's been doing great. It's called A Billion People in the Shadows, the ultimate 1-hour guide to understanding disability.
It's a great title. I love the title.
Oh, thanks so much. It made it to number 1 in its category on Amazon in business diversity and inclusion. The feedback's been great. And so just, doing work along that. And then maybe the other area that I've spent a lot of time in and really passionate about is leadership development, specifically for people with disabilities. Through my work at Johnson & Johnson with the Employees with Disabilities group, we'd often do activities or events. So for example, let's do an event for, Disability Pride Month or World Autism Awareness Day. And you would delegate parts of the event to different employees with disabilities. And they would often struggle with that. And it struck me as I don't understand this. This person is super talented. They're fantastic at their job. They're really smart. How come they're struggling with this? And it struck me that so often people with disabilities, don't view themselves as leaders. Others don't view them as leaders. So they haven't developed some of those basic leadership skills that their peers have had. They weren't student council president in high school or captain of the basketball team. And so now they start thriving in their careers and they're asked to lead and they're like a deer in the headlights. And so
they're
it's
not prepared. Yes.
Yeah. And
let's drill down on that a little bit, because
absolutely.
I think that's one of the things that attracted me to you, and how I found you was through that, because there is such a dearth of leaders of major organizations that are also people with disabilities. I mean, there's only a very few elected officials. There's only a very few in industry. There's probably more that are not identifying. So that kind of brings us back to like square one for like entry-level employees, right?
Sure, 100%.
But can you talk a little bit about what you think some of the keys are? Because if we're gonna reduce the 2/3 of all working age people with disabilities not in the labor force, well, one of the ways you're going to do it is by getting leaders in there to say, we got to work on this.
100%. And I think I always think it's a combination. So one, we need to create the demand get as the great work that you're doing to encourage companies to realize, the tremendous talent that's available in those billion people, with disabilities around the world. But yet we also need people with disabilities to be prepared to meet the moment when those opportunities are there, so they get in there and thrive. And to your point about getting the leaders to help lift all of us up. Just when we start a lot of the diversity programs at Johnson & Johnson, they'd be focused on women, people of color, the sexual orientation, which is all certainly important, but disability is often left out. And when you start raising those points to leaders, because there was such a dearth of leaders with disabilities, it was just out of sight, out of mind. They were happy to support it, but they hadn't even thought of that. I mean, representation matters, as we know. So getting leaders at those higher levels to raise all boats is super important.
Well, disability, right, is not monolithic, but leadership is not monolithic, right? You have all types of leaders, starting at managers and supervisors all the way up to the CEO. So tell us some of the programs that you worked on to be able to develop leaders throughout the whole cadre of management.
Yeah. So So I put together a 12-week leadership development program specifically with people with disabilities, and it's a combination of group sessions and individual coaching with leaders with disabilities that can really relate to that. And really, the very first step, I think, is accepting yourself, realizing that you have tremendous value, not being apologetic, being confident and showing up as your authentic self.
Right.
And what it's been really exciting in my time working in this space, how when I first started, companies would be like, well, that's the nice thing to do. We should do that. That would be right. And then there's been this whole change in mindset to realize that the same business case that applies to other types of diversity absolutely applies to disability as well. And there's tremendous value and experiences and inherent perspectives that people with disabilities can really provide value to the business. So realizing that, not showing up, with that whole imposter syndrome, like, well, I'm lucky to be here and they're lucky to have,
I just happen to be here.
Exactly. That you have tremendous value. And dealing with that, self-consciousness that, so often I would see, people with disabilities that there's something holding them back. And one of my favorite examples of this is we had a person that participated in this course that had a hearing impairment as a result of a birth defect, and he couldn't hear in his one ear. And in the first session, he let us know that he'd never told anyone at work about this. He had lifelong friends that he'd never told about this. So you can't underestimate the self-consciousness that people have about this. So he would go into meetings at work and try to sit at a certain place in the room. But if he missed something, he would make up an excuse like, oh, I'm so silly, or I'm just dumb, or I just missed that. And then we said, before the next session, we want you to tell one person that you haven't told about this. He's like, oh,
Right.
I'm not ready. Maybe by the end of this leadership training, I'll be ready, but I just can't do it yet. The next session rolled around. We said, did you happen to tell anyone? He said, I told 5 people. It was
Yes.
amazing. They were
Yes.
all so supportive, and just you could literally see this switch flipped in this person, and how he showed up as a person and as a leader was completely different, because now he's realizing that he can be his authentic self and show up as
Yes.
who he is, and he just was blooming right in front of our eyes. So
I think empowerment is like one of the most important steps in reducing the stigma. So,
right.
all right, Doug, you're terrific. As we conclude, though, make sure you tell people where they can find your book and find you and work with you if they want to be able to work with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. So the book is available anywhere books are sold online, and then the audiobook and the ebook is available exclusively on Amazon, or Audible, the Audible book, and Amazon for the ebook. And then the work that I do, I have a simple website called Disability Leadership Ventures. So disabilityleadershipventures.com is an easy way to connect with me. Certainly on LinkedIn as well is a great place to connect with me as well. So thanks so much, David.
Well, send us all those links. We'll be sure to put them in the description so everybody can link to those and click on those.
Perfect.
All right. Well, Doug McCullough, keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you and value you. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks so much. It was a real pleasure talking with you, David.
It's great having you. And thanks to everybody else who's watching and listening. We appreciate you. If you can help us out, share, subscribe, like, comment, all of that. It does help us grow. So it's David D'Arcangelo, another episode of Say Visibility, and I hope you have a great day.
For more information about disability employment issues, please visit our website, disabilityemploymentsolutions.com. The Save As Ability podcast is available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, our YouTube channel at Disability Policy Expert, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Subscribe, stream, rate, and review our shows. Your ratings and reviews help our show reach new audiences. Produced by Pod Pro Entertainment. Save As Ability lives within a network of podcasts located at podproentertainment.com. #TheNewRadio. Again, my name is David D'Arcangelo, and I'm your disability policy expert. Until next time, thank you. I hope you have a great day.